One person esteems one day above another, another esteems every day alike. Let each be fully convinced in his own mind. Some say that this verse proves that Christians do not need to keep the Sabbath. However, there are 3 reasons that this is not the case. The context is eating and fasting. It is incorrect to assume that the only way to esteem one day above another is to keep it as a Sabbath. The context of this verse is about eating or not eating, specifically fasting and the eating of meat. The Jews have specific days of the year that they fast on. Only one of them is commanded in the Bible. Many also fasted certain days of the week. As we can see in Luke 18:9-14, some considered themselves more pious because of their ritual fasting. Paul is simply dealing with a holier-than-thou attitude about diet and fasting. It is clear from the context that he is not referring to the Sabbath in verse 5. In fact, Sabbath is not mentioned in Romans. The word Sabbath is not used once in the entire book of Romans, so there's no reason to assume that this is talking about the Sabbath. If this is not reason enough to concede that this passage is not talking about the Sabbath, consider that it is mutually exclusive from several other proof texts used to make the same argument. That means that this verse cannot be used together with other commonly cited passages, including 1 Timothy 4:1, Colossians 2:20, and Galatians 4:9 and 10. In 1 Timothy 4:1, those he is referring to have departed from the faith, giving heed to doctrines of demons. In Colossians 2, they are sharply rebuked for their error. The King James Version says, "Beware lest any man spoil you." In Galatians 4:9 and 10, they are also sternly rebuked. Their participation in the observance of days caused Peter to fear that his labor was in vain. Now wait a minute. If all these verses are talking about the same thing, then why does Romans 14 make it sound like it's perfectly okay? It's just a matter of personal conviction and preference. So you see that these verses cannot all be used as a set of proof texts for the Sabbath debate. We will re-examine these passages in separate videos within this series to show that none in fact support the nullification of the Sabbath or any of God's commandments. We will also address the food issue within Romans 14 separately. So, looking again at the argument in question, this passage is not referring to the Sabbath, but instead the question of eating meats and setting aside days for fasting. The Sabbath is not even discussed in the book of Romans, and this verse cannot be used with several other commonly cited passages for the same argument.